Alright, well, in this video, we have to look at a couple of unpleasant aspects around event listeners and using event listeners in JavaScript. Good news is we'll have a solution as well, but just let's have a look at some of the basics first. So over here, we are getting a button element. This is a custom web component. And we add an event listener to it so that when you click on the button, it should call the clicked function on this class, which is this over here. So this is our event, and here we're just going to do a console.log this. So this is actually going to highlight the problem for us, and then we'll talk about why it is a problem and how we can solve it. Critically, the question is, what does this mean within this context? What I would expect this to mean is this class, but when we actually go and use this button and we click on it, you'll see that this word actually means the button that I clicked, which is not what I want. So the typical scenario that I want to use this for is when I click on this button, I want to perform some action within the context of this component. And now I don't know how to get to this component because this keyword I thought was going to be the component but is now actually the item that I clicked upon. So how do I resolve this? The way that we resolve this is to not assign the function directly but to bind the function. So it's a bit of a foreign concept, but let's just have a look at it. So I can say this dot click handler is equal to this dot clicked dot bind this, and so the output of the bind function will return to us a function, but the item that we add as the attribute to this function will be what is this word within this context. So we're saying that when I use this function, this component will be the item that's referred to as this in this context. Now in more advanced scenarios you can add other objects in here, and that will mean that when I use this keyword it will refer to whatever I have passed in here. So I can then go and replace this item here to say this dot click handler. Now when I go back to my browser and I refresh it and I click on the button, I can now see that instead of it referring to the button that I clicked on, it now refers to this component. Very importantly, this will cause a memory leak. So once I'm actually done with the component, I need to remember to remove this event handler. So what I can do here is just copy the add event listener, and I can, instead of having add, I can add the word remove. So now we're removing the event handler, but because we assigned this item, we need to make sure that we clean that memory up, and the way that we do that is by assigning that to null. So we say click handler is equal to null, so that when this component is taken out of the DOM, this event handler will no longer hold on to the element. So let's just look at the basics once more. I have a click function on this component, and whenever I use a click event, I want the word this within this context and scope to mean the component and not the item that I clicked on. To do this, I use the bind function, which will return me a new function where whatever I pass in as the parameter will be this keyword within that function. So instead of using the function directly on the event listener, instead we pass on this new function that was created by the bind function, and once we're done with it, we remove that again from the event handlers and clean up that function so that we don't have any memory leaks. So if you follow this pattern, pretty much you won't have a problem dealing with the this keyword and event handlers, and I recommend you do it this way.